What's up guys, Bionic here, welcome to another Shadow Legends video. Today we're doing a build video. We're gonna do our YAKARL the Sourge, brand new Void Legendary. We just got it on this account and this player is allowing me to showcase him. So I'm gonna do the Spider Dungeon real quick. Not that he's good here, I just want to showcase one part of his skills, which is his passive. Now, this is a champion that sort of needs to be powered up by another champion. In this case, it's an AoE freeze champion, so we're using Luria to do that. So watch as we apply an AoE freeze here, our YAKARL the Sourge is going to go unkillable, right? So now that we're unkillable, we can almost act as a tank for the Spider Dungeon. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to kill fast enough with only 2 cold hearts, or at least cycle back around. You can kind of also see there a little bit of his damage with a decreased defense and a weaken on. We're going to cover the gear after, don't worry, and then we go again because we sort of take the turn meter. So I'll cover his skills a little bit later as well. But what didn't happen there is that we didn't get the AoE aspect of his kit because the Frost Spider herself did not have a Frost debuff. And as you can see right there, we would need to kind of cycle back around to our 2 Cold Hearts to deal enough damage. And the guy can hit, but obviously he's not there to be a dungeon champion. I don't think that is where he shines. In fact, I think where he really shines is going to be the Doom Tower and also the arena. Okay, so let's get out of there. Let's now go into a different dungeon to see how he actually works in there as well, and that is going to be the Ice Golem. Okay, so we have a team going already right here. I'm going to play along with this setup and we're going to see what he can do. So let's put this on auto 2 times speed and let's just try to pay attention to what he's going to do. Right there, AoE freeze, we went unkillable again. You see it with the buff, right? And if we manage to attack a champion that has the freeze debuff, then we're going to apparently remove it and apply it to all the other champions. We didn't exactly see that happen right there. So let's try to slow it down for this wave right here. All right, so we get buffed up with our Duchess. Nope, she's going for her A1, sorry. Then we go for an A1 with our Lydia right here. We go for A1 apparently with Luria. So we're all of our skills are on cooldown basically at this point. There we go. We have Lord of Ice that triggered. That's his passive. We applied 1 freeze debuff, which is basically increasing his damage inflicted by 10%. Now we go for AoE decrease defense and weaken. A1 from Luria here again, I think. We want that AoE freeze right there. That is the A1 from our big guy. Quite a lot of damage, right? We can deal a ton of damage with this gear right now. Let's see what else we're going to get here. Hopefully they don't buff up. If they put reflect damage up, like that right there, now we're going to be in trouble. This guy is probably going to kill himself, but you know what? It's not the end of the world. Let's see here. Okay, we did go unkillable. We applied all the freezes. Boom. We almost died, but didn't because we're unkillable. So I guess that does come in handy. Maybe a little bit right here. Right there again, taking a ton of damage because we're dealing some damage. We also did not die. And there goes our Foley to finish it off, and he dies. Unfortunately, he can't go unkillable. We revive him, and then we're good to go. All right, so let's speed this up for here. And let's see if we can apply some freezes. We got 1 freeze right there from his A1, okay? So you do need a good amount of accuracy on this guy if you want to apply some crowd control. I wouldn't exactly say he's a dedicated crowd control champion, but it is nice because he's a solid damage dealer, which has a good crowd control component to his kit. So that is always useful, and we're also going to see that in the arena in a little bit. So the fight is basically going to be pretty straightforward. The guy's going to deal some of the damage. He's probably going to end up being one of the champions that deals the most amount of damage in this run, but I'm going to speed it up towards the end and then we're going to move on to something else. All right, so here we are just about done with the run, and I've noticed like one occasion where what happened is like he took the Frost debuff from one of the ads and then he dealt his AoE damage with his A3 called Glaciate, I guess, which means it can happen every now and then, but I wouldn't exactly count on that skill to constantly deal AoE damage because it's so conditional about having the Frost debuffs up at that time on one of the ads. And unfortunately, aside from the Spider Dungeon, there's not really any other dungeons that we're going to have ads to work with for the boss himself. Therefore, I wouldn't exactly say that, you know, this guy is our go-to champion for some of the dungeons. But as you kind of see right here, he did deal quite a lot of damage, almost 2 million damage compared to Foley, which was 1 million. Luria and Lydia not too far behind, actually. All right, so now let's move on to the arena. Let's see if we can get this sort of combo working with for us with the Luria. So let's try a relatively tough team here. We do have the ability to, if I'm not mistaken, ignore some of the shield buffs on the A1, right? If there are one or more enemies under freeze debuffs. So let's see what we're going to do here. We're going to buff up AoE, decrease defense, and weaken. Okay. Now it should be our Luria. She can go for AoE freeze. She does. We go unkillable on YAKARL the Scourge, which is kind of nice. And let's see what he's going to go first. Glaciate or the A2 called Blizzard Rider. He goes for Blizzard Rider. But don't forget, that steals the turn meter, so he's just about to take another turn. This reminds me of Berserker, right? Berserker kind of does the same thing. Every once in a while, he's going to go for, boom, right there. You saw he killed the Krisk. And then he went for the Kale as well, so that triggered the AoE, and then he killed the other champion. So it is sort of like an AoE champion when everything lines up. So that was a good example of that. Let's try something else here. All right, so here we go. We have another round. Let's see if we can find a harder team in here. This, down here. Okay, we got some shields. This might work. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what this guy can do once again. So we buff up first, hopefully. Yeah, okay. AoE decrease defense and weaken. Yeah, perfect. AoE freeze. No, they buff up. They get some shields. Okay. Let's see if we can get our Luria to go before we get controlled here. Okay. Okay, it's our turn of Arbiter here again. Let's buff up, see what happens. All right, looks like we're not going to have our AoE freeze. So let's see what he decides to do here. Still goes for Blizzard Rider. That's alright, we still kill one champion right off the bat. Now Luria's gonna go, and she doesn't do her AoE freeze. So YAKARL basically will be a lot less effective if you don't manage to land that AoE freeze first. It's a good and a bad thing. If you have a typical arena setup where you buff up for speed, you put in your crowd control champion, in this case AoE freeze, and then you make it to your YAKARL the Scourge, then he's gonna be a lot more dangerous. But if you only use him as like a dedicated, or just a nuker, sorry, like a single target nuker without the freeze debuffs, right? There, that should have been an AoE. You end up having only another single target kill instead of being able to hopefully kill them all in one go. So Luria is great to power him up. We also have a new trusty Pixniel, right? So maybe that's the whole point here, is that they released a bunch of new champions that worked well together. So if we would have a Pixniel along with a YAKARL the Scourge, I would be really interested to see what we can do there as well. Pixniel is still not a guarantee to get a freeze on all those champions. Luria either. I think it's 75% chance for her freeze to be applied everywhere. But still, I mean, it's kind of interesting that we get these synergies between champions. But look at that hit, 140k. I mean, the guy can hit. The guy can really hit. It's kind of impressive. So let's go over his gear real quick. And maybe then we can try real quick something in the Doom Tower, because he does have an aura for the Doom Tower. So YAKARL the Scourge, built on this account. By the way, I pulled this YAKARL the Scourge. That was totally me. Yeah, this is CWC Zeppelin, a big supporter of my channel. Thank you so much, my man, for letting me do this, or letting me take this YAKARL for a spin. All right, so we have a Savage set with some good substat rolls here. Crit rate and speed, probably the most important. Crit damage as well. Attack speed, accuracy, crit damage. This is beautiful. We have right here crit. Wow, this is absolutely amazing. 4 substat rolls on crit rate. We have 2 pieces of Cruel on top of that. Speed, obviously, crit rate and accuracy. We have a chest piece, attack percent, and we have 6-star crit damage gloves, beautiful, as well as an amulet, 6-star crit damage. We have an attack ring, of course, with 2 rolls on attack percent. That's amazing. An accuracy banner for some very impressive stats. Okay, don't forget, almost 5k attack. He does start with a lot. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty good. Almost 200 speed, 100% crit rate, right on the dot, 220% crit damage in Savage, and then we have 320 accuracy for the new PvE content, which is the Doom Tower. As for the skills, let's take a second to go over them, and what I meant by, you know, you need to sort of set him up for success. We have a double hit A1, which does have a chance of placing a freeze, so that accuracy does come in play. We'll ignore shield buffs if 1 or more enemies are under freeze debuffs. will also ignore block damage if 2 or more, and then will also ignore 30% of the target's defense if there are 3 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Again, you want to partner this guy up with an AoE freeze champion. Then we have Blizzard Rider, which will basically attack one enemy, 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 3 turns, and 75% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Again, you want your accuracy for this. Also steals 100% of the target's turn meter and places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 3 turns. So he does seem to go for this first. Again, not the end of the world if you are guaranteed to go before your enemies, because they're going to have full turn meters like you saw in the arena. You still have that turn meter, and then you right away follow up with Glaciate here, which is attacks one enemy 3 times. But if the target is under a freeze debuff, again, if he is under a freeze debuff, right, it removes the debuff after attacking and places it on all enemies except the initial target, and then will also attack all enemies except the initial target after the 3rd hit. The freeze debuff will be placed on all other enemies, even if the initial target dies before their freeze debuff is removed. So it'd kind of be interesting to see if he can actually sort of snowball into himself. He goes for Blizzard Rider, applies the freeze debuff, and then it might trigger the Glaciate if you haven't killed that initial target, which was the Blizzard Rider target, right? And then for his passive, he decreases the damage this champion receives by 10% and increase the damage of this champion that he inflicts by 10% if there are 1 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Again, if you can lead up with having the enemies frozen right off the bat, he's going to be that much more powerful. And you also increase speed by 15 and resistance by 50 if there are 2 or more enemies under freeze debuffs. Do be careful with this. If you buff up with Arbiter, you debuff with Lydia, and then he becomes, let's say, faster because you have like a Torment that froze the enemies or whatever. He might be faster than your actually dedicated control, crowd control champion, right? Active effect, we saw that he goes unkillable if there are 3 enemies or more under freeze debuffs. And then we have this aura right here, which is a Doom Tower. So again, feels like this guy is Doom Tower and Arena. As for the Masteries, here is what he used. He does have Helm Smasher, making his total stats even more impressive. This is 220% crit damage with Helm Smasher. All right, now let's move on to a quick Doom Tower run. I'm not going to do the whole run because it's probably going to take a very long time, but I do want to showcase 1 or 2 things in here. So this is an interesting floor, floor 98, because we've got, well, first of all, some pretty tanky champion, so we're going to see just how much damage he can deal, but we're going to see how his unkillable is useful but also perhaps rendered useless in some cases. So we go for AoE decreased defense right there, we apply that freeze, we get the unkillable, but because we're hitting a team that has, watch this right here, okay, so we're unkillable, but I do believe we're going to actually kill ourselves anyway because the Harvest Jack is going to strip that from us, I think. Right there, boom. Right, so that's a little bit unfortunate, is that you saw his big AoE, he dealt a lot of damage, he completely destroyed one of the enemies, but then he ended up, unfortunately, sort of meeting his counter, which was reflect damage from the War Chiefs, and then also losing his buff from a champion like Harvest Jack. So again, it's maybe not perfect, but I'm pretty sure this run could work on auto if we let it go for a long time. But I will, let's say, really quickly compare him to some of the other champions that we typically see in the Doom Tower right now that are really, really good. We have Ithos, which is 2 AoEs back to back, so it's very hard to compete with that. Ithos also does not need to have a Frost champion set up before, right? Then we have a champion like Seer, which will just come in and eat all the buffs and literally just wipe entire waves, which is what I've been using. So I look at YAKARL and I'm like, okay, he's built for the Doom Tower apparently with his aura, but I still don't necessarily think he's best in slot here again. So, really interesting champion. How exactly are we going to use him in the long run? We have a lot more testing to do. And once again, thank you so much for CWC Zeppelin for letting me test this champion on his account. I'm really eager to see where else he's going to try and use him and see what else we can do with him. But I want to have your thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully, you've learned a thing or two here today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later.